Welcome to the Yiboneh Beit Midrash. Welcome to Baka, and welcome home to Torah. So we are in Parshat Terumah. That's you'll find in Exodus chapter 25, verse we'll say 2 and 3. Before we begin, I do want to wish a refuah shalema and health for the whole planet, because we are, I don't know when you're watching this. Hopefully this will have all passed at some point very soon. But there is a interesting phenomenon going on called the coronavirus, COVID 2019. I don't know. There's different names to it. But we are praying especially for our friends in China. So I know you're watching this, my friends in China. Hashem should bless you with a complete and quick recovery and give you strength to carry on. And with that, we're in the Parshat Terumah, and we use the Kliyakar, by the way, as the outline for our discussion. And you can find the Hebrew sheets on our website on Yiboneh.com. And if I'm not mistaken, you go to where it says Beit Midrash, and then you can find the Kliyakar from Aaron Poston, Rabbi Poston. That's who I am. In case I never introduced myself, there it is. It's Aaron Dovid. Now you know who I am. You can all clap now? Okay, SKYPE. Silent. Why? Okay. So then you go through, there's 5 pages. So you choose which book, it's Genesis or Exodus or Leviticus, Numbers, or Deuteronomy. And you can check, and then you go down to the Parsha, and then you can click on whichever Parsha. Usually, if you're going to be looking at this soon after it goes up online, it'll probably be the top of that Parsha. Also, while I'm at it, I always like to suggest that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we have so many other great speakers besides myself. I'm not saying I'm really a great speaker, but there are so many other great speakers besides myself, as I mentioned. And if you subscribe, which is good for you, right? It's not doing anything for me. It's going to be good for you, so that you will know when new videos are uploaded. Okay, so the first question I want to pose, because the Kliyakar is actually going to give 5 questions, but I just want to ask myself, to the audience here, how many times is the word Terumah used in these first few verses? Guys, I'm trying to get you guys awake here.
3.
Yes, that's correct. 3. Okay, so that means you've read the Parsha. Great. You know something about the Parsha. So let's go to Exodus chapter 25, verse 2 and 3. We'll read it in English and in Hebrew. Speak to the children of Israel, right? God had spoken to Moses, saying that he should speak to the children of Israel and have them take from me an offering. So the word Terumah is the word we're going to translate as offering. It really means a gift, okay? From every person whose heart inspires him generosity, you shall take my offering. That's the second time offering is used, and this is the offering that you shall take from them. And then there's a list of how many things? It's not a trick question.
13.
Okay, according to one way of counting it, there's 13. Have you actually counted them? And you only counted 13? So if you go to, by the way, just so I do have it here, it's on the very bottom of page 2, and it goes on to page 3. And if you noticed, I highlighted blue, purple, and crimson wool. So in Hebrew, by the way, we don't have the Hebrew here, but basically these are 3 colors of wool. Some who count 15. Because they count the stones at the end, and they count these as 3. So anyway, it comes out to a total of 15, as opposed to just one type of wool. Well, so 13, that's very significant. 15 is also very significant, because that's one of the names of God, Yud and Hey. Okay, that's not what we're going to focus in on. We're going to focus in on the Kliyakar's questions. But before we do that, I want to look at Rashi real quick. The first two times that God says the word Terumah, he associates something about him and his name to this gift that he's asking for. For example, so in Hebrew,
it says, V'yichachu li. God says, take from me. Okay? He says, take from me a truma. And then later on in the verse, it says, Tichachu es trumasi. Take truma from me. Take my truma. Right? That you shall take my offering, my truma. So the first two times it's used, God's name is associated. And it says, the last time the word truma is used in this verse, the offering you shall take from them. So his name or his personality is not being associated with the word truma. Is that clear? I'll read in Hebrew. V'yichachu li, right? The word li means me, mine. Lishmi, as Rashi says, look at Rashi. Li, lishmi, to me. Okay, fine. Then an offering, which we said truma means an offering. It's you're separating something as an offering for me. So that's the second time. Now, the last time, it's you shall take from them. Now, another thing to focus in on is that it says the yikachu, which is third person. They shall take from me. The second and third time, it's tikhu. You shall take. So what's the difference? Right now, we're just seeing minutiae, right? Very fine details that don't really talk to us. But I'm going to tell you there's some extremely deep things that are going on here that are fundamental in Judaism. We always learn important lessons for life. Okay? So we're starting with the details. Well, I asked how many times is truma mentioned? 3 times. So by the way, the first one is a beka gogelet. It is a head tax, and it's exactly the same. If you're rich or poor, it doesn't matter. You give exactly the same amount. Okay? And the first truma is going to be used for the sockets. You can speak louder because I can't hear you from here. The sockets, okay? The whole tabernacle was like a Lego building. And I don't mean to put it down, chas v'shalom, but it was made to be put together and at moment's notice taken apart and transported through the desert and then rebuilt exactly the way it was, put each pole, each socket, everything went exactly back the way it went. Whatever was on the north side, south side, east side, west side, everything was put back exactly the way it was. Interestingly enough, that's exactly why we also wear, I know that Chabad does not wear a kotorah, a headband on their talis, but we do, most of us do, because whatever goes in the front should be in the front, and whatever goes in the back should be in the back. It should be exactly the same every time, and maybe they have ways of telling their front from their back. I have no idea, but if I didn't have a ketoret, a Torah, then I might not put the front in the front and the back in the back. Also, the Vilna Gaon holds, that's why you don't need to gather all 4 corners of your garment at Shema, because the ones in the back are meant to be in the back. Okay? That's just a little tidbit of information. So the first of the offerings was what? For the sockets. These sockets were like when you have an umbrella, the havdil. You have an umbrella and you have a table out in the yard. So, you want to keep the sun from coming on you, but at the same time, it could be a windy day. So there's like an anchor, right? The pole goes into the pole of the umbrella, goes into this, if you have some kind of weight with a hole in it, and it stabilizes it. So too, these were stabilizers, so to speak, for the poles that were around the courtyard as well as for the tabernacle itself. Okay, so that's the first of the 3 offerings. The second one went for, Rashi says, the korbanot. So the fiscal year always starts when? In Nisan. So during Adar, we have a tradition of reminding everybody, that was always the way it was, to remind people then. That's why Parshat Shkali was enacted, so that we let people know this is the time. During Adar, before Nisan, the time to collect for the new fiscal year of Korbanot and what they took. And we're talking about the communal offerings. So whether it was the twice daily offering, or the Shabbat, or the communal offerings, the Musaf for the holidays and whatnot, that all came from that half shekel that we gave every year. But that was the second offering. The third offering was, and I'm going to mention it now, it's voluntarily a people can give more or less. Even though it said, don't give more or less, that was talking about the first two. The third one, I can give one thread or I can give a pound of gold or a ton of gold. It didn't matter, okay? That's why the 13 or 15 items, individual building materials or sewing material, the materials that went into building not just the tent, the tabernacle itself, but also the kalim, also the vessels, okay? So those were free will offerings that somebody could give from their heart, more or less. So once we have that clear, and you can see that clear in the Rashi, just to back that statement up, if you look in Exodus chapter 38, it mentions that it's a half shekel, and it's chapter 38 verse 26 and 27, and mentioned specifically it was for the casting of the sockets, and the sockets were used for the poles, that held up the tent. Do I have Rashi twice? No. So you can see on page 2 already exactly how many there were, and we're not going to go there right now. Now I want to go into the Kli Yakar's questions, because they are absolutely fascinating. Once you get the questions, you won't go to sleep. You're going to say, how can this be? I need an answer. I'm very interested. Right now, I've heard this as a rumor, that many people feel that these 5 Parshiot that were coming up to building the temple, unless you were like an architect or a builder, you found them extremely repetitive and so heavy on the details. But I promise you, if you can see the depth in just these 2 verses that we're going to discuss, I promise you there's depth in every single syllable, in every single word, in every single sentence, in every single paragraph throughout the entire Torah. Okay, so let's start. The Kli Yakar begins by mentioning, why do the first 2 Terumahs, as I mentioned, there are 3, have God's name attached? As we mentioned, V'yichu li Terumah or Tichu et Terumasi. There's a direct relationship. It's either mine, the Shmi, for my sake, or it's called my Terumah. That's the first 2. The third one is, you shall take from them. As if there's a distancing from Hashem. It's somehow related to the giver. Okay, that's the first question. The second question is, why do the first 2 portions state the language of Kicha before the language of Terumah? In other words, look at the verse. It says, speak to the children of Israel, V'yichu li, take from me, and then the word Terumah. And the second time it's mentioned, it's Tichachu et Terumasi, take my Terumah. So the word take comes before the word Terumah. In the third case, it says, Terumah asher tichachu. This is the Terumah that you're going to take. Okay, you're not bothered yet, but it's something that should arouse your attention, and there is a perfectly legitimate reason why it is like that. The third question, and this is fascinating, because as I mentioned already, the first 2 Terumot were obligatory. Everyone had to give, and everyone had to give the exact same amount. By the third one, it was fluctuating. You can give as much or as little as you wanted. So why do the words, from every person whose heart inspires him in generosity, in Hebrew, me'et kol ish asher yidvenu libo, appear between the first and the second? It's really much more relatable in context if it was next to the third. Whether it was before or after the third would have been more proper. To put it smack in the middle, we're talking about Hashem, right? God, why'd you do this? Why did you place this statement, which is so fundamental to these ideas, over there between Terumah 1 and Terumah 2, when Terumah 1 and Terumah 2 had nothing to do with any free will offering? You had to give. In fact, if you didn't give, you were forced to give. Okay, the third one, that was, like I said, up to you how much. The fourth question. So why is the third portion in the language of taking, if we already said that that's a real giving? In fact, you really can ask about all of them, but more so, like a kal v'chomer, how much more so about the third one? Taking means by force. Take from them. Take from me. It's a language of, as the Kli Yakar says, bal korcha. It's mamish, taking, you can take it. You can physically take it. it's only, right, so in the third one, it also uses the same language. So that's very odd that's even there to begin with, but let alone in the third Terumah. It's the most voluntary of all. And the last question, the very first portion mentioned v'yikchu, the second and third is tichuchu. Now what's the difference? For those who don't know Hebrew, I will explain. Not that I'm a grammarian or any type of expert in dikduk, but v'yikchu is they, second and third, tichuchu is you shall take. So why is the, what do you call it, the person, it goes from third person on the first runaround to second person on the second and third Terumah. Okay, so now we're going to start the second paragraph in the Hebrew, and I'm doing this a little bit different, so I'm going to just say it in English and hopefully not necessarily go into the Hebrew, because it's a really long Parsha, and I'm going to try to bring it down into easy, digestible bites. So do you know that most authorities hold we don't count Jews. We don't count Jews. Rather, what do? We're counting the coins instead of the Jews. So you need to make a census. God says, take a census. So what's going to take place? Every Jew gives a coin, equal, the half shekel, which itself is significant. We're not going to go there, but that's a very important lesson, that someone should feel like they're not complete, right? That they have growth ahead of them. There's somewhere to move forward and higher, okay? So that's a very important lesson, but we're not going there. That's not today. The idea here is brought down is in order to save oneself, in order to save the Jewish people from what they call ayin hara, from an evil eye, which is a very difficult concept to try to explain, but I will attempt, okay? That's the first opinion. So what is an evil eye? So there's many ways to describe it. Let's use my metaphysical analogy. As if everyone has energy, and jealousy is not necessarily a positive energy, and hatred is not a positive. Neither one of those are positive energies. And when we look at something and we have either jealousy, right, or hatred, so there's resonating energy coming out of us which has negativity onto the other person and can affect someone else. It's like prayer, right? It's okay, we move our lips, but not all prayer is necessary to move your lips, right? There's certain prayers that you need to move your lips, and there's other energies. So God forbid that we have this negative feeling and we're putting it on somebody, right? Now, does that mean someone has that power, right? Isn't God in charge? How can we affect somebody? So it could be because they also, let's say they were not perfect and they left an opening, so they can be damaged. We're called hezek riyah, right? There is such a thing. We don't look in other people's yards, right? Bilam said, wow, the Jewish people, they have all these tents and not one of them has a doorway facing another doorway. It's privacy, right? Because there is such a thing as looking at somebody, and this is probably why Bilam himself was chosen, not just because he was a good charlatan and speaker, and he had the gift of gab, which had to go up against the Jewish people who had the gift of gab. You know what I mean by the gift of gab? Ready for this? It says in Hebrew, right, like a double-edged sword. How do you say it? Pithiot. It's like the word P twice. And what is our pithiot? What is our double-edged sword? It's the ability to learn Torah, which we use our mouths, and prayer. So this is our power. And Balak needed somebody to counter this. He also looked for someone with the gift of gab. But we know that he had an evil eye, as Pirkei Avos tells us. So what does it mean he had an evil eye? Abraham had a good eye. And I think this is the way we can actually fight off any negativity that comes our way. Okay, maybe I'm too altruistic about it, but I believe that if you have a good eye, meaning you look generously at people, you judge people favorably, this will boomerang back to you. And it's like a shield. Sounds crazy. Anybody, any ideas? Anybody agree, disagree? This is a way to shield I sound crazy, thanks. This is a way to shield the evil eye. But we will see that there is such a thing. Okay, we're going to see it inside the Tanakh itself. Now, the Abarbanel does not agree with this idea. He says you're allowed to count Jews. But you still have to give tzedakah. You still have to give charity. You still have to give a coin anyway, as an atonement for the soul. I mean, is this opposite of the other opinion, or is just another way of describing it? I'm not sure. Let's read the Hebrew. The Hakrov Elai Lomar Bezeh, the Kliyakar says, it makes sense to me to say this. Bihiyot shebe'inyan hashkalim. The whole concept of giving the money is yesh maklokas bein mefarshei Torah. There's actually a maklokas, some type of differing opinions. Ki yesh sovrim, some hold, shalonimna Yisrael ligo gelis, that we don't count Jews' heads. We don't count them by who they are. Okay, there's all kinds of ways. You can count chairs. You can count shorot, lines on a paper, right? You have to take a census. You have lines, you have numbers. You're just counting the lines on the paper. There's all kinds of ways. We have psukim that have exactly 10 words, and we're looking for a minyan to make sure we have a minyan. So you say the verse, and you can come out with 10 words, 10 people, based on that. Ella hashkalim nimnu. So I'm not counting the people, but you're counting the half shekel or whatever coin. Kedei lahatzila min ayin hara. Okay, so we just described what ayin hara was. I'm sure there's more than just the opinion that I mentioned. However, Rav Yitzchak Abarbanel is choylek al de'ezeh. He argues. He has a different opinion. He says, Amar shenimnu ligogelis mamish. We do count. No problem. Count the Jews. V'hashkalim nitnu derek tzedakah. But you must give tzedakah, you must give a coin anyway. Now he says it doesn't matter whether you give it before or after, as long as you give it. So we mentioned before we started that tzedakah can save one from death, right? And this is another idea. I know we've mentioned about the coronavirus. How are we going to save the planet? We have to do more chesed. We have to be more loving. And we have to learn more Torah, so we know how to do it properly. O kodem haminyan o acharav. It doesn't matter when you give the money, as long as you give it either before or after. Lekofer nefesh. What does that mean, lekofer nefesh? It's translated as an atonement for the soul. K'mavar b'sifri, as is mentioned in the Midrashic, in Parshat Kitise. Fine, so we're not going there, but just keep that in mind, because we will get back to it. Let me see if I have any comments here. Yeah. So if you look at Rashi on Exodus chapter 30, verse 12, when you take the sum of the children of Israel according to their numbers, let each one give to the Lord an atonement for his soul when they are counted. So you see where the Abarbanel is getting this from. Then there will be no plague. In other words, there would be damage had you not done that. So again, maybe that's the evil eye. Now look at Rashi. What does it mean there will be no plague among them? For the evil eye has power over numbered things. When you count things. Now this is interesting, because in Gemara Brachos it says, if you don't count things, you're not precise, you allow room or leave room for a bracha. So for those there's different personality types. I'm the personality type who can't or won't make my cheshbon, my accounting in my bank exact. I round things off, and at the end of the year I find that I have extra money. What a bracha, right? Wow. And it allows room for exactly what I need. For some reason, whatever I was missing through the year, it's exactly what I need, right? So the idea is if you don't count exact, then you can allow room for a miracle, or room for a bracha, however you want to translate that. But when you're so precise and so exact, it leaves very little room. In fact, it sounds like the evil eye has power over numbered things. This is what Rashi is saying. And pestilence comes upon them, as we find in King David's time. Now what I did with chapter 24 of 2 Samuel, I took just a few verses. In other words, I went through the whole chapter. I suggest you read the whole chapter. But I took a verse here, a verse there, in order, but not
Not in sequence. So let's just read it, you'll see. And again, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he moved Dovid against them. He's saying, go count Israel and Yehudah. And Yoav presented the sum of the number to the people to the king. And David's heart smote him after he counted the people. He realized after he counted the people, he did something wrong. This is King David. And David said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly in what I have done. His words, not mine. And now, O Lord, please put aside, the iniquity of your servant, for I was very foolish. And wherever I have 3 dots, that's like I skipped, okay? And David said to Gad was one of the prophets, I am greatly oppressed. Let us fall now into the hand of the Lord, for his mercies are great. But into the hand of man, let me not fall. Which is interesting because we say this in Tachanun. Another verse, so the Lord sent a pestilence, meaning a plague, upon Israel from the morning until the appointed time. And there died of the people from Dan in Beersheba 70,000 men. You see there's something not good going on here. And then an angel stretched forth out his hand towards Jerusalem to destroy it. Is this the evil eye? What is an angel? An angel is spiritual energy. Okay, so we'll leave that for now. It's the real. The question is, what are they? Okay, we're not going to go there, but this is what the text says. An angel stretched out his hand towards Jerusalem to destroy it. And the Lord regretted the evil, and he said to the angel that destroyed among the people, it's enough. Okay, stop. Okay. I think that's enough. I think we get the point that there is something significantly wrong in counting Jews. We see it. Can't go around it.
So what do you do with that now?
What?
What do you do with that?
Maybe he should have given money after, like he counted and he didn't give the money after. And there was a plague. Okay. So
it's a mitzvah that there's an exception. When Moshe counted, he was commanded.
But he did have a shovel. Over there, he did have a shovel.
Okay. Then I want to know what's wrong with the word Yidvenu. When we see the word, every man whose heart motivates him, it says, Kol ish asher yidvenu libo. What's the word yidvenu? So the assumption is, like Rashi says, it's the word nidava. If someone volunteers, he's a mitnadev. Okay? But there's no nun in the word. Now, grammatically speaking, I'm not a grammarian, I repeated that once, I'll say it again. But the nun is dropped for whatever reason. And according to Pshat, Rashi's saying it means like, here, look at Rashi. And look, I'm on number 4 in the source sheet. And Rashi says over there in Exodus chapter 25 verse 2, Lashon Nidava is an expression of Nidava with a nun, which is an expression of goodwill. And in Old French, if anybody wants to ever learn Old French, they can open up a Rashi, and occasionally, quite occasionally, he gives over, and the word is present. What's a present? It's a gift. A gift is usually given with goodwill. Correct? So Yidvenu, even though there's no nun, could be explained according to the Kliyakar in 2 ways. One is like Rashi just explained it. But according to the Kliyakar, it can be explained in an entirely different way, not just entirely differently, but exactly the opposite. Now this can get a little complicated, but I think it'll be quite enlightening. Okay. He says that the nun, it's fine, it's not there. That's God. He gave Moshe exactly letter for letter how to write it. If there's no nun, it sounds like the word yidvenu, which is actually yidvenu. Our word is with a bet. This yidvenu is with a vav, and that means painful, right? When you give money, you can either give it besimcha, with such joy and happiness and open generosity and willingness, or you can give money in a painful way, right? In other words, oh man, do I have to, right? One of those, oh, it hurts me to part with my money, right? There's 2 ways to give.
So now, knowing that, now how do we get to that point? Remember, I said it's a vav in our parsha. Sorry, it's with a bet in our parsha, but the word yidvenu with a vav means painful. So I want you to look. There's a Rashi on Leviticus. I didn't write the word Leviticus in Leviticus 19, verse 16, and this is about don't go around as a gossiper, right? Rachilus, we call it. Rachil. What is a rachil? A merchant, right? Huh?
Peddler.
A peddler. Okay, thank you. So I want you to skip down. I'm not sure where. And okay, I'll say it outside, but you can read this Rashi. It's very interesting. In your face, in your whole way to express and communicate, there are 5 groups of letters. Each letter is going to fall into one of 5 categories. It's going to either fall into what we call the lips, or the tongue, or the teeth, or the palate, or the throat, right? They're called guttural, right? There's different names that we use, and it happens to be the bet, when it's a soft sound, as a vet, has the same sound as a vav. So the general rule, and you'll see the Rashi, is any letter that fits in the same category. If it's a tooth letter, they're all interchangeable with each other. If it's a guttural, they're all interchangeable with each other, and so on and so forth. So here in our case, it's a lip. They say, let me just read the Kliyakar, because he brings down the bet, vav, mem, pei. Those are the 4 letters he brings down here, and he says they're all interchangeable. So what does this teach us? That someone is actually giving. Remember, there's 2 ways. One is giving willingly, as we translated it, with an open heart and generously. But the other is shalibo doved ko'ev ala natina. There's some kind of a pain or sorrow involved in that giving. Therefore, what he wants to say is those first 2 trumot, which we already said is obligatory, right? It's a fixed tax, half shekel. The third one is not. Is a fixed tax, and therefore each person is obligated to give exactly the same. And if he didn't want to give, the Geboyim, the tax collectors, the ones responsible for collecting, they can actually what? Force the person to give. Therefore, remember the question we asked, why does the word take come before the word terumah in the first 2? In the third one, right, terumah comes before the word take. So this is already beginning to answer a very fundamental concept here. Right? Ki al yedei sheyavo hagaboyim legabos mimenu bal korcho yavo litrom. It's because the Gabbai is coming, that's why the person is giving. And therefore, ki kichat hagaboyim misabebet hatruma. It's actually the taking of the Gabbai that is the reason for the giving, for the gift. But when it came to the third gift, which is the 13, as we said, some counted as 15 articles or ingredients, it's coming bin nidava, exactly as a free will offering. V'lo Hashem choyva klal. It has no obligatory aspect at all. The ilu lo yirtze litrom mi yochol lachricho. If he didn't want to give 1 thread, who's going to force him to give 1 thread? Akein hiktim ba truma lekicha. That's why the word truma, the gift, comes before the taking. But there's something still very interesting to know. Because what happens if someone makes a pledge, right? We have shuls, we have these synagogues, and either they have a yearly fundraising dinner for yeshiva or for some kind of a amutah, or on Shabbat that they sell aliyot. Okay, so what happens when someone raises their hand in the auction, or he scratches his ear like that, and right, and he's now what? It's as if he gave. And once you open your mouth and make a pledge, the Geboyim can actually forcibly take it from you. So listen to the Kliyakar. Shiachashu minid bat libo, after he had this generous heart, v'kora shem, and he made the announcement, v'tara min mimono kfi ratzono, and that he was going to give a gift according to, at the time when he said it, something nice. As yochlu hagaboyim likufo lukachach mimenu bal korcho ma shetarm kavar. That the gaboyim can then forcibly take it from him what he had already pledged. Once you pledge, it's no longer yours, and make sure to fulfill your obligations as we speak. This is how it comes down the pike. Hein bapeh, hein biyadayim. So whether it was by verbally making a pledge, or whether you actually gave the pledge, it doesn't matter. It says zos truma shetichu mitam. This is the truma that you will take from them. So that's what it's referring to, meaning after you already made the pledge, then they can take it from you or from the person forcibly if the person had regret after he made the pledge. Otherwise, you'll just fork up the dough. So now the paragraph begins by reminding us what it said in our verse. Diber el bnei Yisrael, speak to the children of Israel, v'yichachu li truma, and what they shall take from me truma. Now notice it says there's a vav, and they shall take from me truma. We also said it's in third person. The other two are in second person. Tichachu. Shiamanu gabayim. This is what Moses and Aaron are actually supposed to do. They're supposed to appoint tax collectors. Shiyichachu truma mikol ish v'ish. To receive, to collect from everybody. Now, what is an important lesson? Whether you're a judge, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a mentor, whether you're a rabbi, any kind of leadership position, but especially a tax collector or a judge. Kodem sheyitbu me'acherim, before you make any claim on anybody else, whether you're a judge or whether you're a tax collector, yitnu heima chelkam. Those tax collectors needed to give first. They needed to be clean. They needed to be naki and innocent. And as the concept is, lekashet et atzmam tachila, you must adorn yourself first. If you want to give rebuke to somebody and tell them they need to get on the bandwagon and do something right or correct, you better have done it yourself first. Then you can be an example and you can lead. Otherwise, you're just complaining. First, they had to give their half shekel, then they had every right to go around and collect from everyone else. And that's why there's a vav. A vav is hosif, it's adding from what had just been said, of the word v'yichachu. But me'et kol ish v'ish yidvenu libo, we already said that word is referring to when someone is not so willing to give, it hurts them to give. Shelibo doive al hanatina. So that's what it's talking about, because the person is miserly, and he's not giving with a good heart. Miratzon tov. So there's to worry if the person is not willing to give so willingly. One of the concerns is when these gebayim come, they're going to get in an argument. They're coming to collect, and I don't know if you've ever had a tax collector, but you usually tell the person that, well, he's not home right now. We'll call you, and they say no, we'll call you. But so maybe you're going to get in an argument with the gebayim. Then az tichu atem. You know what? Now it's time to bring out the big guns. Who's Atem? Moses and Aaron. If you brought out the president of the shul, right, or one of the higher people on the board who came to collect, you're not going to get, people are not going to argue with them, right? They want to look good in front of this guy. Maybe I'll need a favor one day. I don't know exactly the reason, but in Moshe and Aaron's case, it's more kavod. Either you bring Moshe and Aaron, or Nisiya Yisrael, or some type of princely authoritative person. Kivada Yasu Pineim, certainly they would want to show favor to them. V'lo yarivu imahem, and you're not going to want to get in an argument with them. If the person is Yidvenu, as we mentioned, Perusha Kamo Yindvenu, so everything up until this point might be the negative side. But what about if the person was willing to give? Lashon Nediv Leiv, Musav Ashalamala. Then everything's going back to what we said earlier. And therefore, V'yichachu li hagaboyim. God was saying, take from me. They should take from me, these gaboyim, what? The truma from each and every person who's yidvenu, who actually has a good heart. So then, Mamela Nishma, it would automatically come out and make sense that they would hear. Shema sha'amar achakach tichu es trumasi. That perhaps they would say afterwards, you take my truma, which would mashma atem me'atzmechem tikchu, which would infer you, Moses and Aaron, you yourselves, you take it. Midaber b'mi she'eno nediv leiv. We're only speaking about those who are not willing to give. Get the big guns out. Min hatam shenibar, as we mentioned above. So when you have a problem getting money out of the people, bring in the big guns. Bring in the president of the shul. Bring the mayor. Whoever you have to bring. That will work. But when people are willing to give, you can go yourself. Amnam, however, if you look what it says in Parshas V'Yakel, okay, so we're going to, it's number 5. It actually says, this is in Exodus chapter 35, verse 5. Take from yourselves an offering for the Lord. Every generous-hearted person shall bring it, namely the Lord's offering, and then you have right there those 13 or 15 items. So what's interesting about the Hebrew? It says, Kol nediv libo. It actually says, with the nun, anyone who's willingly giving, and he's Yaviehu, he's actually bringing it. So you don't see much need to take. So this gives you the contrast. Someone who's not willing to give, that you have to take bal korchach, that you have to take some force. But if someone who's willing to give, as it says right there in 35:5, then he's going to bring it himself. Whom the Yavihu Atzmo, he's going to bring it himself. Ein tzarich lekufo. You have no need to force the guy. Avaloshin tichachu, as we mentioned, that in number 2 and number 3 of the Trumot, it's second person. The first one was third, so we understand, appoint the Geboim. But here, Tichachu, it's talking about the third Truma. The language Tichachu, which is mentioned in the third Truma, is coming as a purely willing offering. Yesh Devarim Acherim Bago. It's teaching you a side point. And that is, that if the Geboim are coming, Chashuvim, very important tax collectors, to the Mitnadev, to the guy who's willing to give the money, bli safek sheyisa peneihem v'yitnadev yoter mi'ilu hayaboyim al stam b'nei adam. The more important person you send, the more they're likely to give. This works psychologically, right? You have a very important doctor or someone who's dedicated his life to the community, and he's coming and asking for money for the community. People are more likely to give than if you just send the local cop, the local gabbai, to come around. And and this is why we make, and I'm not saying it's a negative thing, but it sounds crazy. Sometimes the people who are involved in fundraising, they put people on the spot in public. Okay? But let's say somebody wants to give anonymously. Many fundraisers will twist the person's arm, not literally, but try to convince them, if people knew it was you that gave, they're going to give too. If it's just anonymous, they think we're just fooling around and trying to raise money. But the fact that you are invested in us, the fact that everyone follows your advice, right? And people like you, and they know that you're so dedicated to the community and you're an honest guy in business and in life, that if you're the one who gave, then more people would trust our organization. So we want your name on our building. So the person himself didn't really want the name on the building. But guess what? He gave in. Not because of his own glory. He's not interested in his own glory. He'd rather remain anonymous. But he realizes that too, that more people will give. If my name is on the building, I'll give in. I'll do it. So please don't be upset with people who put their names on buildings. Because it was the head fundraiser that probably convinced them, and I'm using this across the board in many cases, that's the case. Okay? Not 100%, but in most cases, it really is the truth. Now, it was very interesting, Israel Yaakov, you brought up the idea of the Barbanel, and how does it make any sense? So the next paragraph is going to deal with that a little bit. Kingam hashkalim, also regarding this half shekel, afal pi shayu choyve, even though they were obligatory, nevertheless, hayu kamot tzedakah v'kefer, v'koifer. Nevertheless, it was tzedakah, it was charity, and it served as an atonement. Yi maimar, right? It should have said, Me'et kol ish asher yidvenu libo lashon nedava mamish, right? If it was going to say that, it actually meant a real, true willingness. then it's Musav Ashalamala Vishalamata. You can play the words back and forth both ways, meaning that just like those two Terumos, the two Terumos that were, the first two, that were totally, Shigam Shtei Terumos Elu, Hayu Tuluim Ben Nedivat Lev Hanotain, that's the first two, if that was the case. Aval Terumah Shlishi Lo Hutrach Lahaskir Zeh. So, in other words, since the first two were not at all dependent on the willingness of the heart, but we want the person to be willing, so the third case where it's totally willing, there's no need to mention it at all. In other words, if the lesson is try to get the person to give it willingly, and that's why the first two, which are not free will gifts, but add the idea that it should come from a willingness, you certainly don't need to mention by the third, which is a free will gift on its own. It's obviously as a free will gift and not as an obligation, so you don't need to write it. And he says this answers up why the word truma came before kicha. In other words, in the first two, it says the yichachu truma or tichachu trumati. So the word taking came before, and we already explained why. But in the third case, now we understand why it says truma and then kicha. The first idea is the giving, and later on, if the person regrets, then we can come back and force him. Now, according to the first two trumot, they are what we said was kofer nefesh. Kofer nefesh means some kind of an atonement for the soul. And if you can find in Exodus chapter 30, verse 15, it actually says, the rich shall give no more, the poor shall give no less, right? In Hebrew, ha'osher lo yarbe, v'dal lo yamit, mechatzit shekel letet et truma Hashem, lekaper al nafshotechem. It actually says it's going to serve as an atonement for the soul. Now look at Rashi, an atonement for your soul, according to Rashi, which again, is it really that much different than the Abarbanel? And is it different than what we saw in 2 Samuel chapter 24? What does it mean, atonement for your souls? They should not be struck by a plague. Is that what the evil eye is that he was talking about before? Some kind of plague because of the counting. Another explanation, what does it mean, atonement for your soul? This was written because God hinted to them that the Israelites here we're talking about three offerings. And we mentioned what they were for. The first one's going to represent what? The sockets of the Mishkan.
Which everybody had to give.
And we saw that in Exodus chapter 38:25. And the second one, you'll find you don't really find it here, but it's about the communal sacrifices. So there was another census in Numbers chapter 1, verse 1. And we're reading this Rashi, by the way, in Exodus 30, verse 15. And we're almost to the bottom. And so they were for what? Whether you're rich or poor, it doesn't matter. Everyone had to offer this exact same amount for the first two. When it came to the third, it says, whoever set aside an offering of silver, copper, on and on and on. In this offering, not everyone gave the same amount, but each gave according to what his heart actually inspired him to give. So we're talking about this being, as the verse said, in, again, chapter 30, verse 15, as a kofer al nafshotechem. It's a atonement for your soul. So that's very interesting, whether you're looking at the Abarbanel or Rashi. It's somehow going to stop negative evil eye, negative power, or it's serving as an atonement for your soul, as it said. Now, what does that mean? Look in Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 4. It says, behold, all souls are mine. God says, Hein kol nefashos li, Heina. Everybody has a soul and they belong to me, God says. Kenefesh ha'av u'kenefesh ha'ben. This is very interesting. Like the soul of the Father, like the soul of the Son, li Heina. They're mine. Hanefesh ha'choite hi tamut. And the soul that sins, it shall die. Okay. So now, what is that all about? Why is he bringing this up? Listen to this. It's a chesed. It's such a kindness of God that He gives us the ability to give this money as an atonement for our souls. Okay? So, in other words, God forbid, somebody sins, they're deserving, not every sin is deserving of death, by the way, right? There's only 36 that have karis, the worst type of punishment, which is being cut off from the Jewish people. Who would ever want to be cut off from the Jewish people, right? And so many other sins either include lashes, or sometimes positive mitzvahs don't carry any punishment at all. The punishment for not fulfilling a positive mitzvah is the missed opportunity to come close to Hashem. Okay? There are 36 of the most severe, and there's many of the negative, we call negative means the lo ta'aseh, the don't do's, that fall in between. It could be a kanas, it could be a penalty, right? So this is a chesed of Hakel Yisbarach Lokech Baka Gugelis Trumas Nefesh. It's such a kindness that He's taking the money in place of our soul. By the way, even the word Mishkan, which means the tabernacle, it means collateral. God took that as collateral. And when we, the Jewish people, were deserving of complete destruction, hey Chaim, and death, He instead took the collateral and destroyed the base of Mikdash on 2 occasions. Okay, and we know that if Moshe Rabbeinu would have come into the land of Israel and built the temple, that which he built with his own hands could never have been destroyed. So what a chesed, that even this is a chesed, that Moshe did not come into the land to build that temple. This is a mishkan. A mishkan means collateral. That's what the mishkan actually served as. It served as an atonement. That's why in the first Terumah, the Yichuli, and in the second is Terumah Si, God's name is attached. God's name is actually attached. Kishem Hashem Nikra Aleim, because the name of God is spoken on or called upon the soul. We're talking about the soul of the Jewish people. But why is the third one, there is no relationship, direct relationship that God has. It's take from them. Right? The first one, Lishmi, and Terumah Si, take it from me. God's name is attached to number 1 and number 2. But in the third, it's not. Why? Because it's not a chov, it was never an obligation. Therefore, lo yechaseh Shem Yisbarach utla b'mitnadvim. God did not relate Himself and hang or depend on the giver. Zos hatruma asher tichachu mitam. This is the truma which you're going to take from them. Ki hi tlui behem. The whole third gift was totally dependent on the giver, nothing to do with Hashem, and that's why it says mitam, from them, not from Hashem. Lo me'ez Hashem hayesazos chava. It was no obligation on Hashem to the people on the third gift. But this is where it gets deep. Hine karov l'shmoa. It really makes sense. Hatam acher amashi yichei shtei trumos rishonos el Hashem Yisbarach v'lo shlishit. Why God's name is going to be attached or related to the first 2 and not to the third? And this is because any place where you find geder erva v'hakna'ah, some type of how would you translate geder erva? We're talking about humility and submission. Bein hatachtoni, meaning amongst the people in this world, us, Shem Hevyon Uza. That means that there will be the hidden might of God revealed. Hashochin es daka v'shafa ruach. That is where that's where the dwelling onto the meek, the contrite of heart, and the humble will be. So in other words, the third articles were the givers involved, and therefore the egos involved. And each person can say, I gave more than the other guy. Even if he's not going to embarrass the other person, in his head, he knows what he gave, and he knows the other people gave less. And this way he can build himself up. And building yourself up over someone else is not the way to go. The first 2, everyone gave exactly the same. Here, the third gift has to it this idea, any place where there's a sham geder anava, some type of restriction on haughtiness, and it's limited to humility, that's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu's strength shows forth, especially to those He'll dwell with the contrite of heart and the humble. Aval, but any place that there is a tinge of haughtiness, nid nud gava, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not want to liyached shmo yizbarach sham. He doesn't want to place his name or associate his name with such behavior or psychological emotions. Therefore, shtei trumas rishonos, therefore the very first two, which God did associate his name with, right? Yad kol adam shavabem, every single person gave equally. As it says, the rich did not give more, and the poor did not give less. That's in chapter 30, verse 15. Ein makom l'shum echad ispayer al chavero. There's no place for one person to be haughty or prideful over the other friend, over the other person. Trumasi gedola mitrumatcha. For someone to say, my gift was greater than yours. No place for that. That, therefore, God will relate himself to that. But by the first, where it says, V'yichuli l'shmi, remember, give to me. And Rashi says, for my name, Ki kavar biyarna lamala techila parshas Miketz. This is a very interesting idea. It says, B'kol makom asher azkir eshmi. This is in chapter 20, verse 21. Okay, so you'll find this number 8 on the source sheet. An altar of earth you shall make for me, and you shall slaughter beside it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your cattle. Wherever I allow my name to be mentioned, I will come to you and bless you. B'kol makom asher azkir et shmi, avo elecha ubeirachticha. Okay. So Shekol Osios Hashem Hagodo Moire Al Geder Nava. Every letter in the name of God actually signifies such humility. Wait till you see, it's going to blow you away. We all though know the name of Hashem is Yud Kei Vav Kei. I want you to look at number 12 on page 7. On the right side, let's start with the left side. The left side is all the different gematriot. Inside the gematriot you have Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Gimel is 3, and until 22, fine. So all those letters, then you actually have the final letters, which even go beyond, into the hundreds. Now look on the right side. Now on the right side is called the Milui. Milui means like the word Aleph. It's not just a letter anymore, it's a word. The word is spelled Aleph, Lamed, Fe, the way it sounds, Aleph. Bet Yud Taf. Guess what? It's no longer a 1 or a 2. It's now 111 because Aleph is 1 plus 30 plus 80 is 111. Or Bet is no longer the number 2. Bet is Bet, which is number 2. Yud is 10. And 400, tough. You have 412. So out of all the letters in the entire alphabet, which God created, He spoke and the world came into being. His own name, the one He chose for Himself, is the smallest of the entire. Look how significant it is. Hey Aleph, it's number 6. Its value is number 6. Like a Yud, Hey, and a Vav and a Hey. So Hey is only 6. Vav, it's only 22. Look at the numbers. They go from like 70s to 500s, right? There's nothing even close as low as 6 or 22. And what about Yud? It's only 20. So, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating when we think about this idea. Wherever you find the greatness of God, which is in His name, is, was, will be. We're talking about all time, all eternity, all facets of this entire universe. It is the smallest possible combination of any word that can ever exist, ever. Blow you away, huh? Okay, so too, the chen hadavar hanasim in shtei trumos elu dome el truma atzma. So too, the basically what is coming out from the truma, the produce, what is made from the gift, it's very similar to the gift itself. What do we mean? That just like all of them were equal, right? When it was given, Shabbos, when it was given, it was all equal. Loya bashum hitnasut le'echad chavero. There was no opportunity for one person to exalt himself over his friend. Everyone gave the half shekel in the first two. Kach naseh mitruma achas ha'adanim. What do we call the sockets in Hebrew? Adanim. It's very interesting. Ever think about the word? What does it sound like? Adon. These are the sockets. Why? Kikol ha'adonim hayushavim echad kamo chavero. It was cookie cutter. They were, all the sockets were exact. There was a mold. They were exactly the same. Just like everyone gave the same amount, so too what was produced from it was exactly the same. Hayu tachtonim lekol habinyan ka'askupa hanidreset. What were these like? These sat at the bottom of every pole that held up the tent and the courtyard. So you're talking about, and it's a really interesting word, like you're making yourself like a carpet that everyone's going to tread on by the door, right? A welcome mat, okay? This, just like we gave, it wasn't like, we're talking about the sockets, and it's called a dome, which we'll get into in a second, is used for the bottom. Mamish, you couldn't get lower than that, okay? And he calls it Yesoidos L'Kol Binyan. It's the foundation of the entire building. Ki kamohem yu osehem. Now there's an interesting verse. It appears twice in Psalms. King David, in chapter 115 verse 8 and chapter 135 verse 18, word for word, letter for letter. Like them shall be those who make them. Kamohem yu osehem. Okay? Now what does that mean? Just like ha'osim hanadava hahi shavim minatina, just like they made the gift equally, everyone gave the same. Lo yash l'shum echad mehem hitnasut al chavero. There was no room, there was no possibility for one person to have self-aggrandizement or any type of haughtiness over another person. So what does this again teach you? It's moirim al geder anava. It's referring to the concept of stay humble, be humble. Because anava is the soda binyan asher olav kol beis Yisrael nachon. This is actually not just the binyan of the temple, or the tabernacle in this case, but it's of our people. The Am Yisrael is built on humility. This is what the structure of the animal, the people of this concept called Israel. Nikru b'shem Adonim, and they're called by the name Adonim. The sockets are Adonim. Sheyesh b'mashmuto lashon adnus usrara, which actually carries with it the inference of a language of mastery and authority. Right? The lower you go, I don't know, I'm trying to think what the Democrats, they messed up the phrase, right? they set me, and I have to go crazy trying to remember it. But basically, when you bring yourself down, God raises you up. When you raise yourself up, God brings you down. You've heard this idea before? So this is what it says. Ya'an, ki kol mi she'oisei atzmo ka'as kupa hanidreshes milamata. Anyone that makes themselves like this doormat down below in this world, nasei adon milamata. Hashem will make you the master in the world to come, or in the higher worlds. Ki kol hamashpil atzmo. Anyone who brings themselves down, Kadosh Baruch Hu magbiho. Hashem will raise him up. The oise yesod noise lekol habinyan, and you're making yourself as the foundation. The one who does that, he's bracing. He's the brace. He's the keeping the whole the whole building up. Ka'adanim elu, just as these sockets shu yesod noise lekol habinyan, just as the sockets kept the whole building structure stabilized. Kimilat nasi. Now the word nasi is the word for the prince. But it means the leader. Perushu shuhu noise es acherim. Noise really means to carry. In fact, it also means to be married. So my wife and I used to look up words in the dictionary when we were newlyweds. We were hanging out together a lot. And one of the words we came across was noise. So it means marriage. But you know what it really means? To carry. It means to carry. And now I understood why in tradition that the husband would take the wife over the threshold, carry her over, right? That's like a symbol of what's really going to be taking place for the next 120 years. So you actually are carrying others. The prince, the leader, carries others. Ki kulam nishanu alav, as everyone will be relying on him or leaning on him. Okay? Now, what about the second Terumah? We talked about the first one being sockets. The second one was for the korbanos, for the korbanos hatzibur, for the communal offerings. They also, shahayu gam came shavim b'kol yom. Every single day they were the same. In the morning you brought a sheep, and in the late afternoon you brought a sheep. Okay? Every single day, rain or shine, right? Keves echad b'boiker v'sheni bein arbayim. So in chapter 29, verse 39, which you'll find on number 9 on the source sheet. And it's written over there in Tehillim, in 51, verse 19, the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit. O God, you will not despise a broken and crushed heart. Zivchei Elohim ruach nishbara. So the question is like this. What is the cause of what? You bring the korban and then you get a crushed spirit? Or the crushed spirit is the reason for bringing the korban? Let's see. Also in Isaiah 57, verse 15, God says, with the lofty and the holy ones I dwell, and with the crushed and humble in spirit, to revive the spirit of the humble, and to revive the heart of the crushed. Look at Rashi. I dwell, and thence I am with the crushed and the humble in spirit, upon whom I lower my presence. Humble and crushed means suffering from poverty and illness. So now we're looking at this idea. He says like this. This is what the Kliyakar says. Tachli tazvachim. The goal, the purpose, the goal of bringing these offerings is lahavi esa adam lidei ruach nishbara. It's to bring a person to this point where he has a true sense of a broken spirit. Al kain yichase gam kain olav yisbrach. Remember, that's why God's name is going to be attached. Terumah C, the second Terumah. Tichlesh Terumah C. Lefisha Terumah asui mimenu hakol moira, as it says that the Terumah itself, the offering, is, and not only that, not only is the offering, but the result and everything that comes from it, which is the korban, is all about Geder Anava, trying to teach you about humility. God relates to it and He's involved with it because that is, like we said, God is the most humblest, if that can be said. But the third Terumah, the third gift, remember, it's not all equal. In fact, Hayu mitchalfim pachot v'yoter. There was an exchange rate. You can either give more, you can give less. So everyone who is rich certainly could give more, and there's a place. If he does give more, there's a place in his heart. Lihit nasut al ha'ani, to raise himself above a poor person, to have a certain amount of pride. Yesh li chelek gadol mibeit Elokeinu yoter min ani. He could actually say, "Oh, I got more, invested in the house of God than the other guy." And that is not good. Bahar boti mahar umatan. Basically, he's saying the abundance of my gifts is what created it. That's why all the vessels are made from these 15 gifts or 13 gifts, however you count them, right? It's not for the sockets, and it's not for the kabanos, but it's for all the other kelim. The other vessels, Kamo Aaron, like the ark, the menorah, the candelabra, the shulchan, the table, the mizbeach, the yeter hakelim, and all the other vessels. So there's no doubt that it's true that some of these vessels have more importance than others. There's pecking order, right? We know that the Aaron was certainly the most holy of all and special of all the vessels. Shayitaron liktsasam al kitsasam. Some are more important than the others. Kizer Aaron, on the holy ark there was a crown. There was a little rim of gold that stuck above, and that was parallel to what we call Keter Torah. Right? Some people involved with just Torah. They're really interested in Torah. And then what about there's a crown on the Mizbeach, Keneged Keter Kahuna, parallel to, let's say, prayer or whatever the Kahuna do. And there was a zer on the Shulchan. There was a crown on the table. That's keneged keter malchus. That is attributed to wealth. And there are people who that's their gift. I don't know what they call it. There used to be a term, a golden thumb, and I guess if you're a plant, you do plants, you have called a green thumb. The Midas touch. That's what I was looking for, right? There's certain people that just have it, right? The Midas touch. Afa pish kfi kedusha sakelim hayalo lekadosh baruch hu liyaches nedavu elav yisbrach. Now this is interesting. See, according to the virtue of the sanctity, the holiness of these vessels, what should have been, right, that God could have maybe been involved, but the problem is the person is attributing to himself, right? There's a little bit of room for pride, the hitnasut, and haughtiness. Lamar be'al hama'it, the fact that he gave more than the other person. That's the reason God's name is not attaching itself to the third gift. Okay, now the last paragraph, the Kli Yakar feels this is a perfect opportunity to answer one of the questions we asked earlier. After there's this whole, in the third Terumah, it starts with gold, then silver, then bronze or copper. So everything is according to an order of value. Clearly, it starts off with an order of value. Okay? If that's the case, the big question is, why in chapter 25, verse 7, are those gems, the stones, why are they last? I'll just read the words. Lama kochashev avnei shoham the avnei miluim libasof. He says, avanim bli safek yikar min hazahav. Maybe according to weight, right? He says they're more expensive than gold, right? Diamonds are more expensive than gold. I'm assuming we're talking about weight. Obviously, a ton of gold is not cheaper than a small little diamond, right? But a diamond that weighs how many grams, if you had a gram of gold, then the diamond would certainly be more expensive. At least then. This is written 400 years ago. I'm assuming the same applies today. I could be wrong. If anybody disagrees, please write the comments and like to hear the truth. Even though we're able to explain by saying, even though they did bring them, meaning who brought them? The princes. And this is a very interesting situation that they got themselves into. Okay, listen to this. Well, let's look at the Rashi first and the story that came out of it. Look at Exodus chapter 35, verse 27. It's page 8. It says, the princes brought the shoham stones and filling stones for the ephod and for the choshen. Now, let's see the Rashi. The word nisi'im is missing a yud. Did you notice? Nisi was with a yud. Hanisi'im is without a yud. Rabbi Nassan says, what prompted the princes to donate for the dedication of the altar first, before the rest of the Israelites? In the Parsha that's dealing with the Nisi'im, they were the ones who went ahead. It was, remember, Aaron, Levi didn't give it all, and he felt bad about it.
That's Parshas Naso.
Parshas Naso. So you have this idea that they gave when it came to the Hanuchas HaMizbeach, but over here, they didn't seem to be willing to give it first. In fact, what did they say? They said, let the community donate whatever they're going to donate, and then whatever is missing, we'll give. Now that, as a fundraiser, I have run into people who say, come back to me, whatever you're missing, I'll give. And usually by the time, I usually get the full amount, so I don't really have to come back to them. It's a little bit of a dissing you. So so this is what they did. Since the entire community, they completed everything, as it says in Exodus 36:7, and the work was sufficient, so the princess says, oh my God, we got lost, we got left out. What are we going to do? So that's why they brought these very expensive stones. Therefore, they brought these donations first for the dedication of the altar. But the Rashi says, since at first they were lazy, they did not immediately donate, a letter is missing from their name. And Hanisi'im is written without the yud. Now, again, the Yud is one of those letters that is in God's name. So now, putting this all together here, listen to what he says. Kamosha Mevi Rashi Parshat V'Yakel, which we just read. Al Kain Hiskir Nevatam Bachrona. That's why their gift is mentioned last. Nevertheless, Gam Lefi Darkenu Nochalamar. You're actually able to explain it as we've already explained. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to show She'echad Hami'it Ve'echad Hamarbe. Whether you gave a lot or whether you gave a little, Hakol Shavin Lefanav Yisbrach. Everyone is going to be equal. And that's the main point, that everyone is equal. Al Kain Hiskir HaChashuv Lebesof. That's why the most important people are mentioned last. Shelo Yeteferet Ha'ashir El Ha'ani. That's so the rich person does not boast about himself regarding the poor person. Nidvati Gedola, by saying, "Oh, I gave so much." Hakatuv Mana Barosh, and to think that he was listed in the beginning, no. And not only that, his Kirnidavatam Bi'achrona, the reason why they're mentioned last, Lefi Sharum Levavam Havim Lidei Zeh Shenit Tavu Besof. The whole reason they gave last was because of the haughtiness that they had. By saying, Yit Navu Hatzibur, let everyone else give, and then whatever's lacking, we'll complete. This is considered ge'ah v'ga'on. This is a very haughty and prideful way to act. By saying, Yesh le'el yedenu lemalos mashem mechasrim. You know what? We have the power. We have the ability. We'll just fill in whatever's missing. That's chutzpah. Alkein hiskin nidvatam achrona. That's why they're mentioned last. Kikol magbia et atzmo. This is the theme we said before. Maybe this will be the title of the shir. Anyone who exalts themselves, a Kadosh Baruch Hu mashpilo, God will bring him down. And not only that, now he mentions that the Nasim are missing a Yud. We only saw it in Rashi, but now he's bringing it. Kirak os achas min Hashem hagado hachuk b'shem Nasi. Out of the 4 letters, Nun, Shin, Yud, Aleph, it's only the Yud, which is part of God's own name. It's that one letter of God's name that is taken out. The Yud. Al Yedei Shehit Nasu B'divreihem, because of the display of arrogance through their words, Hashem took away His name from their name, from the name of the Nasim. Hamoira Kulu Al Geder Anava, again to teach us how important it is to remain humble. K'mivar b'pasuk. We already read this verse in chapter 20, verse 21, that every place where my name is mentioned, I will come and I will bless you there. That's in chapter 20, verse 21. This is the fundamental secret of the entire Torah. The Tzuras HaYud, even the actual way the Yud is shaped, teaches you about humility and smallness. It is the smallest letter. Now, I recently had a friend who thought that the word Yid is a negative connotation. And I'm sure that it can be and has been used in a negative connotation. But in most religious circles, people joke around and call each other Yid. Yid, what's up, Yid? Because it's like, first of all, it's a compliment that we are Jews, Yidden, and the idea of being a Yid is to be small and humble. The Yud is the smallest and most humblest of all the letters. So now I'm going to end this with this. I wish everybody, we started off by blessing the people in China and all around the world. They should have a refuah shalema and that this virus should die. But I think that as a way to prevent this thing from getting further is for the Jews to do their job as the light to the nations. We should really fulfill our mission by what? By being servants of Hashem, doing what's right in Torah and mitzvahs, okay? And being the light to the nations. And that light, like in medicine, there's a thing called ultraviolet. It can kill, it can clean. So Bezrat Hashem, through the light of the Jew doing the mitzvahs and learning the Torah, that we should spread the light that should be like a disinfectant to the bacteria and the viruses that are floating all over this planet. And I wish you all Shabbat Shalom and a good life. And welcome home to Torah.
Neshama